Hello, this is Eastern Europe Review, the joint production of BELSAT TV and TVP World with reports and analysis from Belarus, Russia and Ukraine. I am Sergei Pelesa and these are the stories. How do Avdiivka residents survive nearly surrounded by Russian troops?
It was raining, there was silence. I like it when it rains. When it rains, they don't fight.
The Lukashenka regime is fighting against Halloween celebrations in Belarus.
So-called Belarusian authorities see a threat to themselves and everything.
Bride kidnapping. Will it be finally prohibited in Kazakhstan?
At least 200 girls have experienced this horror since 2019.
For the past 2 weeks, the Russian army has been advancing in the Avdiivka area located in the Donetsk region. Avdiivka is continually under rocket and bomb attacks. Civilians have been losing their lives every day. Yet more than 1,500 people remain steadfast in their decision not to evacuate. What's happening there? Our colleagues have managed to gain access to the city, which has already been restricted to civilians.
The White Angels police evacuation crew is loading dozens of boxes of bread for the residents of Avdiivka. Each day, they deliver essential humanitarian aid to the locals. There are no grocery stores left in the city. All of them were destroyed by Russian missiles.
We'll be distributing bread in multi-story buildings and residential areas throughout the city to ensure that as many people as possible have access to bread.
Through the thick fog, the sign marking the entrance to the city is barely visible. Owing to the deteriorating situation on the front line, locals have grimly nicknamed it the gateway to hell. Despite the relentless shelling of the city, around 1,600 people still live here. To put this in perspective, in 2022, the number of Avdiivka residents exceeded 30,000 people.
Is this recent? 2 days ago, it was a missile strike.
The Old Town is the term locals use to refer to the residential area in the outskirts of Avdiivka. Just a short while ago, 2 missiles struck the house inhabited by a couple. Tragically, the woman lost her life while lying on the sofa, and it was her neighbors who helped to remove her body from the rubble of her own house.
We barely pulled it out. When we pulled it out and I looked at it, one of the eyes was completely missing. There were open fractures, severed arms and legs. It was a total mess.
Despite the daily shelling of Avdiivka and the loss of civilian lives, residents are choosing not to evacuate. Instead, they opt to seek refuge in basements.
Everything I have runs on batteries. We have access to water, and I even made soup outside on the grill.
The locals are using the same firewood to heat the miraculously surviving apartments.
We're already freezing. We need firewood, or even better, coal or compressed coal, because firewood burns quickly like matches. We're freezing.
In a 5-story building, locals have installed a potbelly stove on the ground floor to heat the apartment.
A Russian FAB 1,500 aerial bomb struck near this 9-story building, creating a crater approximately 10 meters deep.
The weight of this bomb is 1.5 tons. As you can see, that part of the house has been destroyed. It collapsed and there was still one person trapped under the rubble.
Although every building in Avdiivka has been destroyed or damaged by missiles and air bombs, the city hospital continues to function.
Despite battles taking place just a kilometer away, with the constant sound of artillery strikes and machine gun fire, there is a functioning hospital here. We welcome everyone who arrives, regardless of whether they walk or crawl to us. The White Angels, our police force, bring us the injured, and we assess whether a person should be an outpatient or inpatient based on their specific situation. Every 3 to 5 days, the hospital grounds are struck by enemy artillery.
According to local residents, there are fewer strikes on the city when the weather is foggy or rainy.
It was raining, there was silence. I like it when it rains. When it rains, they don't fight.
Why don't you want to leave? Our walls, that's all they are. Avdiivka is my homeland.
On the outskirts of the city, frequent exchanges of fire between the Ukrainian and Russian armies can be heard. Despite the advancement of Russian troops, British intelligence reports that the losses incurred by the Russian army near Avdiivka in 2023 have been the highest for the entire year. However, in their efforts to capture the city, Russia maintains an additional 40,000 soldiers in this direction and continues to deploy fresh forces to the area.
Halloween has become an unwelcome holiday in Lukashenka's Belarus. Officials have declared war on everything foreign and took up the concept of import substitution. Educational and cultural venues, most of which are state-owned, have received orders from above to curtail Halloween celebrations. Even private companies' initiatives are restricted. How are the Lukashenko's authorities explaining another absurd ban?
In Belarus, the Lukashenko regime continues to fight against Western holidays, including Halloween. According to officials, the tradition of celebrating Halloween promotes violence, aggression, and antisocial behavior of children and youth, and also contradicts historical, cultural, and spiritual traditions of the Belarusians.
Today's so-called Belarusian authorities see a threat to themselves and everything. They, of course, don't think about children at this moment. They just want people not to adopt Western traditions or engage with Western culture in general.
Last year, the Council of Ministers distributed a letter among executive committees nationwide instructing them to prohibit Halloween activities in educational and cultural institutions which are predominantly state-run. Celebrating Halloween in public places has also become increasingly challenging, although the Council of Ministers letter does not mention commercial companies. Pro-government activists promptly raised objections to children's parties and even to the presence of pumpkin and spider web decorations in cafes.
Dear Pinskrev, Halloween celebrations have been prohibited on the territory of Belarus as per the relevant directives from the presidential administration of the 24th of November 2022 and the Council of Ministers. Is Pinskrev so audacious that it has decided to fight against our authorities?
This is how the odious pro-government activist Volha Bondarova reacted to the publication by the Belarusian furniture factory Pinskrev offering to create a mysterious atmosphere in interior design. With her complaints, Bondarova also thwarted the plans of a coffee shop in the city of Babrusk to celebrate Halloween and had festive decorations removed from the Almy supermarket in the capital. The authorities of the Horodnya region have sent a letter demanding the cancellation of Halloween celebrations in educational institutions, cultural centers, and rented premises. Businesses were compelled to remove posters advertising themed events. Officials argue that Halloween doesn't align with the Belarusian mentality, but they don't appear to prioritize the preservation of national culture.
The official authorities can't propose anything other than a war, disassembling machine guns and military porridge. It's a tendency to isolate children from the diversity of this world, so that they see only one side, Russia and Belarus. This is not only enforced through Halloween, but through the entire education system.
Now, the authorities are developing the concept of so-called cultural import substitution. Among other things, the document proposes to reject foreign Halloweens and Valentine's Day. Instead, officials are planning to sustain the celebration of what reflects traditional values: Father's Day, Mother's Day, and agricultural holidays.
There are state holidays, and there are holidays that touch the soul and heart. Halloween and Valentine's Day are among the latter. These holidays are marked by collective emotions, a shared sense of a significant occasion. It's something that can't be banned. It's either present or absent. That's why I think the fight will be pointless.
Before Halloween, BELSAT television channel asked its Belarusian viewers about their plans for the holiday. 42% stated that they were going to celebrate Halloween, while the majority, 56%, had no interest in this holiday at all. only 2% indicated they didn't plan to celebrate, being afraid of the consequences. In Russia, which has a significant cultural influence on Belarus, the authorities also do not welcome the celebration of Halloween. It has been labeled a satanic foreign holiday, and in one of the schools, there was a proposal to replace it with pumpkin spas, as it resonates with the traditions of the Orthodox Church.
Kazakhstan is planning to introduce legal consequences for kidnapping for forced marriage. Bride kidnapping is a practice known since ancient times. This tradition still exists in Central Asian countries, including Kazakhstan. Girls are kidnapped right on the street, married off and often to a stranger. Victims of such marriages mostly face psychological and physical violence. However, the kidnappers themselves almost always evade responsibility for their actions.
No, I don't want to stay here.
You cannot step over me. You will stay in this house. You will be happy.
These are stills from a film about bride kidnapping in Kazakhstan. The kidnapped girl is persuaded not to leave and is convinced to accept her fate. The film is based on real events. The following shots are no longer staged, but real.
Don't cry. Don't cry. Nobody wants to make you cry.
Videos regularly appear on social networks, with a girl being pushed into a car against her will and taken to the groom's house.
I was 17 years old at the time. It was a rural area. I was deceived. I thought I was going to another place, but it turned out they kidnapped me to marry me off.
After graduating from school, Shuldiz from the big city visited a village to see her relatives before entering university. A local man, 4 years older than her, tried to court her and asked her to marry him. Shuldiz politely refused. One day, her acquaintances invited her to visit a neighbouring village, but they deceived her and took her to the house of the would-be suitor. Her own mother, who arrived shortly after the abduction, did not pick her up.
Typically, when the girl is kidnapped, all the groom's relatives start begging her to stay. My mother should have ignored it and taken me away then.
Shuldiz ran away from the man she didn't love more than once. She jumped over the fence, got to the river, and on the other side there was freedom.
For some reason I came back. I was afraid, fear, because I got married and that's it. Since childhood, these principles have been instilled in us, family values.
Shuldiz gave birth to a son, but the marriage was bursting at the seams. After repeated attempts, she managed to end the relationship and get a divorce. Now she is happy as she has got married for a second time. She calls everything that happened to her a nightmare. The story of Shuldiz, when compared to other cases, can be considered as having a happy ending.
The bride's refusal is perceived very negatively. First, they try to scare us with relatives. Grandmothers lie down over the threshold. Such traditions still exist. If a girl tears off the scarf that was put on her, she gets raped to keep her in the family, as her shame would not let her leave.
In the Criminal Code of Kazakhstan, there is an article, kidnapping, under which the perpetrator faces up to 15 years in prison. However, if the kidnapper voluntarily releases his victim, he does not bear criminal liability. Only a few cases ever reach court. There are no exact data on the number of forced marriages in Kazakhstan.
There are no statistics on such crimes. According to the Ombudsman, at least 200 girls have experienced this horror since 2019. Obviously, this is just a small part of all the kidnappings.
Some historians and experts are convinced that the very name of the custom has been misinterpreted. The original word for this tradition means to run away with a girl. No one took anyone against their will, and tradition has nothing to do with it.
In the pre-revolutionary period, there was no such tradition as bride kidnapping. Everything was by agreement, matchmaking, and so on. Nowadays, for some reason, they started talking about bride kidnapping.
In order to draw attention to the problem, members of the youth movement Jana Adamdar carried a cage with a girl in a wedding dress through the streets of Astana. The Human Rights Ombudsman in Kazakhstan has recently proposed introducing a new article to the Criminal Code, kidnapping for the purpose of marriage, which would prevent bride kidnappers from escaping punishment. This initiative has already been supported by the Prosecutor General's office. In neighbouring Kyrgyzstan, where the law provides for punishment of up to 10 years in prison for such a crime, the number of bride kidnappings has decreased by 70%.
These are all our stories for you today. Thank you for watching Eastern Europe Review. Please continue to stay with TVP World.